let me know.
Hello everyone. So get a check at this. We are joining you via Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter all at the same time. I'm David Begnaud. This is
Chris Ritzen.
Chris Ritzen, Chris Young Ritzen.
Yes, that's true.
Chris Young Ritzen. I had to get that right. Chris is a producer with 48 Hours. I'm a correspondent for CBS News on assignment for 48 Hours. So I guess we can maybe look at the Facebook, because we look all over.
I know, we have 3 phones here.
4 different devices. So listen, here's our goal and objective of what we want to do tonight. Tonight what we'd like to do is a shared experience. So basically while you're watching 48 Hours on CBS tonight, while you're watching the broadcast from home, you can have your iPad, your cell phone, whatever device you have to engage with us here. Chris and I will take your questions. We're going to watch this show just like you. In fact, we're in a hotel room right now in Chicago, and it is on CBS, and we're waiting for the show to start. So the idea is we're here to engage, and so we'll be on for the entire hour. After the show, we have a ton of new reporting. A lot of it.
Yes. We will tell you a little bit about the parole hearing that happened this week. So we had a reporter inside that parole hearing, and he will tell you a little bit about the reporting that came from that we couldn't include in the show, which I think you'll find very interesting. And we'll also tell you a little bit about some things that we weren't able to include in the broadcast. We only had about 45 minutes of time, but we have a lot of things that we couldn't really mention that we will talk about.
The rest is, she says 45 minutes of time. The rest is commercial breaks, right? Got to pay the bill somehow.
Yeah.
So, look, there's a ton of new reporting that is, quite frankly, some of it is shocking, very revealing, and this is usually stuff that we have to leave on the edit room floor, and we say to each other, God, I wish we could have included that. And this is such a wonderful opportunity to add to the reporting that we're doing tonight on 48 Hours. So, the 48-hour special is called
The Chowchilla kidnapping.
The Chowchilla kidnapping happened 1976. Yeah.
Yep.
Middle of nowhere, Chowchilla, California. As one of the people, one of the survivors will say in the show tonight, back then it was a cow town. You could drive through town in 30 seconds.
And it's beautiful. I've been there. It's God's country. It is beautiful. It's still a farming community. And no one really ever thought anything like this could happen in a place like Chowchilla, and it did.
This, and Chris and I have both been in the business for a long time. When we hear about breaking news, so often the first thing you hear about the story, it doesn't quite turn out to be that, right? Like the first report always tends to be bigger and more dramatic than the truth and the reality. But in this case, the reality was just as shocking as the first report, right? These kids, 26 school children just vanish, like in broad daylight, in the middle of nowhere, in the state of California. And Chris, who, by the way, has been working on this story for how long?
It's been, it feels like a year, but actually it's been about 10 months.
Yeah, yeah. Chris was able to pull, we had such a wealth of archival video from our colleagues that covered the story. And Walter Cronkite actually led the CBS Evening News for 2 nights in a row.
I believe 2 nights, yes. And then, yes, and we had reports probably for 2 weeks after that until as you'll find out in the show, what happens. But we had so much archival material, which is very unique for a producer to have all this material to work with. And it really tells the story. And some of the best reporters of the day, too, were there.
Well, in fact, one of them, Harold Dow, who was a correspondent, who went on to become a 48 Hours correspondent.
Yes, God bless, who we love and miss. Yes,
the late Harold Dow, who was such an incredible talent.
To hear his voice,
and those of you who watched 48 Hours for years will, of course, know Harold and remember him. Yep. He was such an inspiration to young journalists like myself. And actually, one of his relatives works at CBS News.
Yes, he does.
Which is so cool. Which is so cool.
Small world.
By the way, we have a friend of ours who is off camera, who's going to be helping us
Take
go
some
through
questions.
some of the comments, which by the way we ought to, a lot of people are,
Should we look to see what
let's
we
look. A
have
lot of
here?
people are checking in saying, hi, I'm watching.
Oh, cool. We can see this.
Somebody
see.
asked what happened to the kids. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
look at this.
Yeah. Oh, and our boss is checking in.
Hey, Z.
Hey, Z.
Let's see.
What happened to the kids? So.
Well, we're gonna find out. You
You're
have
gonna-
to
you're
watch
gonna-
the show,
yeah,
and,
so-
and that's the important thing. We have to tell everyone.
Yeah.
Remember, we've got to watch the show.
But
It's
you're
coming
going to
up.
hear from 3 of the 26 survivors in the hour. So you'll hear from them, and hats off to Chris, who really has done.
And my team, by the way.
And your team,
Yeah, we've been amazing.
100%.
Yep.
But they've really done yeoman's work, telling a story that's not only the shock and awe, the tragedy, the trauma, but you really come away from it understanding what it did to these children who are now middle-aged adults. You really get a sense of how this has impacted their lives. And by the way, continues to impact it today. So,
And you'll find out at the end of the show. So you have to wait till the end to
Yeah.
hear all about that.
so again, if you're just joining us, the idea is we're going to watch the show just like you. But we're all tuned in, right? We got the
Yep,
Twitter
I'm
going, we
very
got the
excited.
Instagram going, we got the
Hello.
Facebook, and we're going to watch it. And then in commercial breaks, we can chat about it. Ask us whatever you want. Hello, Alberta, Canada. People watching from all over. Naples, South Carolina. A lot of people watching. Somebody wrote Z's checking on things. Augusta, Maine. Yeah, so the show starts at 10 p.m. Eastern.
10
so
p.m.
what are we,
Eastern.
like 9 minutes?
We're in Chicago. Central
Crowley,
Time.
Louisiana. All right, Crowley. My mom's from Crowley.
Oh, she is?
Yeah, and Crowley's about
Yeah, where is
30
that?
minutes from where I grew up. So I grew up in Lafayette,
I know
Louisiana.
that, mhm.
So South Central, and Crowley, which is known as the rice capital, is about 20 minutes outside of Lafayette. My mom's from there.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
lot of relatives.
Somebody's asking what the name of the show is.
Somebody's asking what name?
So it's called 48 Hours, the Chowchilla Kidnapping on your CBS station.
Oh, and by the way, we should say this is a. Why don't you elaborate a little bit on this?
The
Is a
Live to
what we
Tell
call
series?
a live to tell. What is that exactly?
So the Live to Tell series, we do a couple of these a year, and it's really stories told from survivors, people who have overcome, tragedies, and these are stories that they talk. We basically have them talk to camera, so it's really in their words. So as you'll see tonight, 3 of the survivors, really tell us everything to camera, and it's a very intimate feel. And
I think it's a really compelling
it's a
way.
compelling way to tell
Yeah,
a story.
of, like,
it's
watching
a
a
different,
story.
It's a different way to tell a story. So
'Cause-
that's why some of the viewers don't understand, why we do it that way for the Live to Tells, but it's just a different way to tell a story.
Yeah,
And
usually-
as you said, be more intimate.
Well,
you know?
usually what we do in interviews is we have the person not look at the camera, and they look at the person doing the interview, right? The correspondent, the producer, whomever it is. But in this case, the objective was no, look right to camera. And I think it was really compelling
I do too.
for this. All right, so I'm trying to share this on my page. Here we go. Get ready. 48 hours starts in less than 10 minutes.
And I also want to just say, I just want to thank all the survivors that did talk to us, because it is so not easy for these people to sit down in a chair and kind of go back and relive things that, especially this awful, story. And they did, and it was, as you'll see, they're very strong, and it was really amazing,
They sure were.
Yeah.
They sure were. Taryn, you got anything?
A lot of hellos from Puerto Rico and Miami.
All right.
Yeah.
Hello,
WFOR.
Puerto Rico.
And a lot of,
Well, did you work in Miami?
No, but I love Miami.
Oh, and we do love WFOR.
Yes, we do.
That's our CBS station in Miami. I was a
Yeah.
Miami-based correspondent,
You've been everywhere. Can't keep up with
For
you.
like a year
they're
and a half.
asking where you're going to be live, where they can watch it, how many Instagram,
So we have Twitter, Instagram on 48 Hours, Twitter account, the 48 Hours Instagram account, 48 Hours Facebook accounts, and your personal,
All my
all
personal
your
accounts
personal
and
stuff,
the 48 accounts.
which I can't keep up with. Someone wrote, what is this story about? Tonight it's called the Chowchilla kidnapping. For those of you who are just joining us, it is a story about 26 children who were kidnapped on the way home from summer school, and their bus driver. And this happened in 1976. And they disappeared, and the story was one of the biggest, it was a gripping story back in 1976. And
I feel like it would be a gripping story even if it happened today,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And why are we in Chicago?
Oh, so we're in Chicago because I'm actually here with another team of mine from CBS This Morning, and we're shooting a feature story that's actually quite interesting. It's going to air. We're doing a special broadcast about a week from now on mental health, and so we're shooting a story here that involves veterans who actually have put on a play where a lot of times they have members of the military who come, and through seeing the play are kind of triggered and taken back to past traumatic experiences and actually have the ability to undergo some counseling on the spot. It's a very moving, compelling, profound hour. So you'll see it in about a week, but that's why we're in Chicago. So I said, Chris, if we do this, you've got to come to Chicago. And so she left her babies at home for one night, just one night.
This is worth it.
Yeah.
Olga saying that she remembers she was just a small kid. Olga Rosario, she was just a small kid, but she remembers and she understood what was going on. It was very scary for her.
Yeah, a lot of the comments that I'm seeing, a lot of people remember the story. I mean, this was all over the evening news back in the day, and this had never happened before in this country. 26 kids just vanished.
But we also realize that a lot of you watching may not have been alive at that time, and so you didn't live through it. And I don't, I certainly didn't live through it. I didn't know anything about it until I was assigned. But I also feel like it wasn't, even though it was so big back then, it's not a story that's still told today. I mean, it was brand new to me.
Because it's so horrifying. A lot of people probably try to forget about it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, I'm a parent, there's a lot of parents out there. I think when you're watching this is probably a parent's worst nightmare in so many ways. You put your child on a bus thinking they're going to be safe. So, this is, it's really crazy that it happens.
Chris and our team have done a great job of really unearthing some rarely seen before photos and video from that day and that time period. Photos that were literally under lock and key in the prosecutor's office.
And I want to thank the Alameda prosecutors, district attorney's office, because they really worked with us. Everyone in that office was so kind and opened up their vault of evidence for us. And so another producer and I, we weeded through it and we pulled out some images that are pretty haunting and powerful. And you're going to see those tonight.
So, all right, so we are oh, you know what? Somebody just responded to the election. I think that's Louisiana where they have another governor's election. So, yeah, they may not see 48 hours because they're doing election coverage. But at any rate, all right, so again, we are hoping that at some point as you're watching the hour, if you have a question, type it to us here, and Taryn will help us. I'm looking all over.
And I have my phone here.
She's got your phone.
But guys, remember to watch. Just keep watching.
Yeah.
Keep watching. And how many more minutes?
Know exactly where Chowchilla is.
That's a good question. Chowchilla is near Fresno, California. So it's in the valley. It is. I drove it. It's about 3 hours from San Francisco.
And just in general, how many kids before it starts?
26 kids. Yeah, 26 kids.
And one bus driver.
And a bus driver. That's right. 26 kids and their bus driver. Yep. All right, so we are, my clock is right. We're less than 60 seconds to air. Final commercial break. Show starts. Thanks for watching, everyone. Ooh, we got 1,000 people.
This is great.
Someone's just talking about the importance of mental health and how it must have impacted
Let me tell you
everyone.
something.
Well, wait till you hear. Yeah.
Yes, mental health it was a definite factor here,
Mm-hmm.
and you will, by the time the hour is over, come to understand how traumatizing it was for their mental health.
And their families too. They all suffered. You
Yeah,
know, the
good-
parents.
good point.
You know, the
Good
parents.
point. Yeah, good point.
So I think, are we at time? Is it going to starting? Let's see. Here we go. Here we go.
And we're on the air. All right, so that's what we call in 48 Hours Land Act 1.
Yeah, you have to breathe almost after that. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we have
Karen's got some
a
questions.
question. Did you get to speak to all 26 kids?
That's a very good question. The answer is no.
Back up just a little bit. So
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. The answer is no. We weren't able to talk to all 26. A lot of the survivors are private and they want to stay private, so out of respect. So we reached out to a bunch, and we, you know, Jennifer, who you saw in the in Act 1, and Larry, and you're going to meet in a little bit, Mike Marshall. But those were the three. With the Live to Tells, it's also, you know, oh, sorry. We were just honored that they spoke with us.
And
Well, maybe we should save this for the end.
Okay.
What they decided not to do once they
Yeah.
found the kids. All right, well, hey, we'll hold that for the end.
We're going to hold that.
In the meantime, what's coming up? So you just saw the first. What's
Oh,
coming
but-
up real quick in this hour? So now we know where they're going in this act, right?
Yes. Well, we know that we don't know really what's happening.
we're gonna find out.
We're going to find out in this act.
All right, so we know that they've been kidnapped. Where did they go? We're going to find out where they were taken. And here's some of the video that Chris got a hold of with our team
And here we go.
just outside Chowchilla. Did they give you those recordings, or were they in the prosecutor's files?
No, they gave them to us.
Wow. Wow. All right, guys, so if you're watching, just to be clear, we're watching the show. So hopefully you guys, I know a lot of you are, but hopefully you guys are watching the show on CBS, and then we'll chat with you
At the commercial
in
break.
the commercial break. Great. We'll take your questions in the commercial break. Stand by. Whew, but they did. All right, so now we're in the show. So they've been kidnapped. They have been taken to Livermore, which is just right outside the Bay Area. How far is that outside San Francisco?
I know it's 100 miles from Chowchilla. I'm not sure exactly.
All my Bay Area people are
Yeah.
yelling at the computer right now.
But,
Point is, it's in the Bay Area.
But I just want to let's remind our viewers, make sure to please watch the show. We are just going to talk to you guys during commercial and then after the show.
Yeah, so we're watching the show.
Reminds you guys.
We're
I
watching
know-
the show with you.
Yeah, just so it's clear.
You got questions?
Yeah, a lot of people are commenting on the impact that they think, just even from this first part, had
Yeah.
on the kids, that it stole their innocence. Did you find
Absolutely.
that?
Totally.
Absolutely.
Did you get a sense in talking to, so far you've seen Larry Park
And
you've-
Jennifer.
and
Jennifer Brown.
All right. There's someone else you're going to meet who's also a survivor.
In this act
in the
coming
next
up.
act coming up. What sense did you get from them? You also talked to Jennifer's mom.
Yes, and yes. Joan is remarkable. You know, for parents, you can't imagine how traumatic this was to, for them to come home and their kids just not be home. And to disappear.
What we also found out was that there was a somewhat archaic way of dealing with trauma that we wouldn't do today. In other words, if it happened today, kids would likely go to therapy. That didn't really happen.
Well, we're
back
going to
then,
learn
did
in
it?
a little bit. We're going to
Yeah.
learn in a little bit
Yeah.
kind of how some of these kids dealt with it.
Yeah. In fact, you're actually
Sorry,
gonna find out where they went, and sort of one of the coping mechanisms that the adults at the time thought would be best. Again, you'll probably be like, "You're kidding me," but it was 1976. It was a different period.
It was a different time.
You know, it was a different period.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, a few people are commenting that they can relate to this kind of trauma from when they were kids and
Mhm.
wondering, it's not 1976 anymore. What can you do now to deal with
deal
that
with
kind
this.
of? What can you learn from these people in dealing with your
Well,
own
I think
trauma?
people have to still keep watching the show because we will definitely be addressing all of these issues or touching on them. And I think when you learn from what these survivors learned and how the trauma affected them, you'll understand.
You've
And
also You've also heard from the sheriff at this point, who is still alive and kicking and doing well.
Oh, he's amazing.
And has a great memory.
He's a memory of an elephant.
Yeah.
I mean, he remembered every detail. We were fascinated by him.
Yeah, as to what happened back then.
Yeah.
And
the recordings, I think.
Oh, yeah,
you
how
know,
did that come about?
Jennifer and her mom, you know, recorded afterwards, and she just happened to say, "Hey, you know, these probably don't." I remember she said, "I don't even think these work." They were on little tapes. And
did you know about it when you went to do the interviews?
what we're on? No.
You didn't know about it?
No.
Wow.
Okay, so everyone, go to watch your TV now, and we'll talk to you commercial.
All right, you got questions?
Yeah, I have a good question
Yep.
from Joanne Ortiz, and she's asking, she said she was young when it happened, and it was horrible, and during the gathering of all this information for the report, what was the toughest part that you had to hold back your emotions to concentrate on your work? What was the biggest challenge when you were gathering all this information?
I think speaking with the survivors and hearing them open up about these conditions, especially this part of the story that you just heard of being underground and hearing how hard it was for them. For me, that was the hardest part, to listen to their accounts and in detail.
So somebody also is asking on Facebook, what are your personal conclusions regarding the entire situation? I think what I come away most struck by is the way in which the justice system played out for the people who were responsible for this, and you'll hear more later as the hour goes on about how they were found and then prosecuted, and then what is still happening with them today. It's a hell of a story, and that's a lot of the brand new reporting that we have. So when the show ends, when it goes off the air on television, we've got a half hour of stuff. I mean, you should see all the papers sitting in front of Chris that we want to share.
I brought all my
with you.
documents.
Yeah,
I'm a document person,
Yeah, it's really
so
good.
you can't really see the.
So you've got all those documents. What does it take to prepare to tell a story like this? What kind of
That's a really good question. This is a 43-year-old story, so the amount of research that we had to do to get up to speed, it took a long time. I mean, we've been working on this for 8 months.
And was there ever a time when you said you came up against a block and you said?
Not on this one, because we were able to, the survivors that we talked to, we all worked really well together, and the Alameda.
Every story and any story. I think the good thing about having an hour to tell this story is if anybody's dumb enough to want to try this or sick enough, you're going to see what happens when the full resources of justice go after you. So I think if anything, if you're going to tell this story, having the ability to spend 45 minutes is worth it, because you hear everything from start to finish.
Yeah, and remember, this is also really about the survivors and what they went through, live to tell. You know, these are survivors that live to tell their story. So we hope that the focus is on their story and not on the kidnappers.
And that's also a priority that you should know when we're putting the story together. We're not focusing on getting the bad guys to talk. We're focusing on getting the survivors, right? This is their
story.
hour.
This
It's
is their story.
You got another one?
Yeah, just in general, people are saying this is almost unbelievable. It feels that some of them actually thought it was a movie. But when they were growing up, they just remembered it as a movie.
Well, it actually they actually did a made-for-TV movie on this. I actually saw little bits of it a long time ago.
How long ago was that?
I think it was in the 80s.
Wow.
So.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How many survived?
They all survived.
All 26.
They all survived from this incident, yes.
All 26 kids survived. So thank you for your questions. I haven't been looking. Let's see the Twitter. Yeah, I'll look on Twitter if we.
And actually, someone I think that's Twitter.
Yeah, that's Twitter.
Asked if we only talked to 2, and I'm just reiterating. We interviewed 3 survivors. They all talk, though, so I think they all know that we were doing that. I know they all know that we were doing this, and we were just honored that we were able to get 3 to really open up.
Totally. So real quick, somebody's saying, is the episode new, brand new? This is not a rerun. Somebody says, where can we find those details that didn't get into the episode? You'll get them right here. You're in the right place. Let's see. Did you answer the question? Why these 3 kidnapped?
Sorry, Twitter. I'm out of frame. Sorry.
Why these 3 kidnapped the bus full of kids? We haven't answered that question yet, right?
What?
That's coming up.
That is coming up.
Yeah, the why is coming up.
Coming up.
Stay tuned. Anything less before we?
Yeah,
anything more before we go?
Wanted to know if the people you interviewed felt like it was a healing to tell their story.
These are really good questions. I hope that they think it was healing. I didn't ask them that. I know that they They want people to know about this, and you'll see at the end kind of their final thoughts.
Yeah, one of the,
Oh, and we're
so
back.
here we go. One of the victims makes a point to say, I want everybody to know that I turned out really well given what I went through. So anyway, all right, here we go, back on the air. All right, so this is the one point where I've been wanting to tell you the story that Chris actually just told me tonight about what happened after the kids were rescued and why the officials didn't tell their parents right away.
Well, they thought that the kidnappers would come back, and so they were waiting. And a lot of the parents found out from the television coverage.
Do you know how long they waited before the news reported?
I believe 9:15, and they got out at 8.
Okay, so like an hour. What's interesting about that is the world that we live in today. With
They would have
Twitter,
found out right away.
Oh my God, some reporter would have
Absolutely.
been tweeting on the way to go, and like,
Yeah.
it would have, you know, but like in a way, like it kind of, I get why the cops would think
Of
maybe
course, because they thought they were going to come back and...
because these knuckleheads, these criminals, had fallen asleep.
Well, we're going to find out about that. Yeah, later.
So,
And also what happened when they called the police department. Questions?
well, people are asking me, you know, you spoke to one of the parents,
Yes, Joan.
and we're talking about the trauma of the children. What about the trauma of the parents? Did you
Absolutely, absolutely. And you'll find out later from Mike Marshall how he felt about that and how it affected
And
him
somebody's
and his
asking too,
family.
what motivated 48 Hours to tell
To
the story?
tell the story. This story was brought to us by a producer on the West Coast who had known about this story, thought it would be a good look to tell story, and he was absolutely right.
But what about Joan? I mean, when you interviewed her, did she? Her daughter seems very resilient and makes it clear in the hour that she is a hell of a survivor.
She's always been a strong kid, and that was one thing Joan said. You know, but Joan has 2 children had 2 children who were in underground. She had a son as well, so we're going to hear more about that
But
later.
did she seem scarred, Joan? I mean, did she?
Yes, but she's also a very strong person, just like her daughter. But a lot of the parents, I don't think, were as strong as Joan, that's for sure.
Yeah.
As a journalist, what's the most important thing about telling a story that's this old, that there's so much information?
That's a
so long
really good
ago?
question. It's just getting it right. I mean, there's so much information, getting it, you know, and reaching out to everyone. And it's such an old story. A lot of people aren't even alive.
And also, we could have told this story 6 months ago. We could have told it 6 months, you know, from now. The bottom line is there was a current affairs peg, which was one of the convicts was going before a parole board.
And we'll tell you what happens at that parole board hearing later in the show.
Yeah, well, if you were watching CBS This Morning this week, you already know. But what we're going to tell you after the hour is a whole bunch of what happened, like kind of the guts of the hearing that we weren't able to put into the hour. So if you're just joining us, or if you have been, we thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, welcome. This is producer Chris Young Ritzen. I'm David Begnaud. When the show is on the air, we're quiet because we're watching it with you. And then as soon as it goes to commercial break, let's see if we have any questions on here. Were the kidnappers ever caught? Absolutely.
And you're going to find out.
You'll find out exactly where soon. Are the kids still alive? Yes, they all are.
Someone's asking if you had anybody who didn't want to talk.
Yeah, a lot of the survivors are very private, and they didn't want to do this. Talking about it opens up a lot of painful memories for a lot of these survivors. So the answer is yes. A lot of them did not want to
Somebody
talk.
asked if the kids received therapy. Many of them did. Let's see.
Later in life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The intentions, you're going to find out a little bit later. Stay tuned.
Was the movie a true representation of what happened? That's a good question.
In my opinion, you're going to have to ask the survivors that one, but it was a movie. It was a little bit...
Did the bus driver feel guilty or feel a trope of guilt? He is deceased.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have any writings from him as to how he
We
felt?
actually, John Blackstone interviewed him.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, so we actually have, he felt a lot of pressure. I mean, these children were his responsibility. He's the bus driver, and so he had a lot of pressure. Guilt, I don't think guilt, because there's nothing else he could have done.
He
did the best job he could do.
Yeah.
And as you'll learn later, you know, he really kind of was a hero in this.
Somebody asked when it happened. It happened in
1976.
76.
July 15th.
Taryn, you have something else?
Yeah.
Oh, we're back on the air. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, guys, so if you're just joining us, we have been quiet because we're watching the 48 Hours on CBS right now, as you are. I'm David Begnaud with reporter Chris Ritzen, and we have a friend of ours who is here kind of fielding some of your questions. Taryn, why don't you give us one?
Someone's asking how they dug a hole that big without anybody
Seeing them.
Seeing
They
them.
did it at nighttime. They did it at nighttime, and they did it they started digging in months before, as early as November.
And remember, they had access to it because one of the suspects' dads
Owned the rock quarry.
Owned the quarry.
Mhm.
So it's not like they had to sneak on or find it. It was their property. So they went. They would do it at night. They buried the trailer, dug the hole, and quite frankly, thank God they put the ventilation in there with some food and water, and the mattresses is what made it possible for them to
kind of stack up.
then start clawing. And that's why we talk about the bus driver. Thank God he was with them.
Yes, he calmed those kids down.
He calmed the kids
Yep.
down. He helped
Agree.
to dig the hole.
Yep.
He told them to take a nap, right? Wasn't the bus driver the one who was like, everybody, let's just get some rest?
Yes, everyone
for a minute."
get some rest,
Right.
because it was very
Yeah.
traumatic for these children who were some as young as 5.
Right.
Someone did ask, Mary Cribbs, if you're listening, I know you wrote in, why did it take 12 hours for the kidnappers to drive to Chowchilla, which is 100 miles away? That's because they wanted to wait until it was dark, very dark, to put them in the hole. So they aimlessly drove around, wasted time, until it got to be very dark, late at night. Hopefully that answers your question.
Got another one?
Yeah, someone's asking, you saw the plan, the written plan
Yes, we
that
did,
they
yeah.
had. A little more detail about what was on the plan, and also, was
wish I
there a
brought that.
plan
Mhm.
if they didn't get the ransom?
They did not have a plan, I don't believe, and forgive me, I don't actually have it with me, and I wish I brought it because I would have just read it. But on one side it was, this is the step by step, and then the other side was, if this goes wrong, how would we handle it? But it was more of, we will dig a hole, we will provide food, like it was like that kind of planning, intricate planning.
Janelle just asked, did the police have any leads as to where they were before they escaped? There
Nothing.
really weren't, but you have
Nothing.
to remember, everything came together so fast.
Fast.
Within less than 24 hours, they found the bus, they found the kids, and how quickly did they know the names of the suspects?
Well, they knew by the next day. We're on.
We're back.
Sorry,
We're back
sorry.
on the air. Okay, we're gonna go quiet. Back to the show. Okay, everyone, that is the end of the hour. I get the goosebumps
I know.
as it
We don't even have the sound
as
on,
it just
and I'm
finishes.
like,
I just have to say,
no.
just phenomenal
Thank
job.
you. Well, it was a team effort,
I
as
know
you
it
know.
was. And by the way, can we give credit to our team, the editors?
Yes, Gary Winter,
Gary
Mead
Winter,
Stone,
Mead Stone,
Joan Edelman,
Anthony Venditti,
and Anthony and Jordan Kinsey.
Nancy Kramer's
Nancy
our
Kramer and Judy Tygard, our
Judy
amazing
Tygard
executive
is our
producer.
boss, and Z, our president of
She
CBS
greenlit.
News, she's the one who
Yes, and George Osterkamp did so much reporting and great work on this.
On
And
the-
he
on
brought
the
the
West
story
Coast.
to us on
Yeah.
the West Coast. He's
Yeah. So, okay, we told you, by the way, if you're just joining us, I'm David Begnaud. I was lucky enough to be asked to be involved in this project. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Chris Young Ritzen is the producer extraordinaire who sort of got it all together and spent close to a year putting it together. Listen, this was an experiment tonight. What we wanted to do was complement what you were watching on television with a little bit extra that you could watch during the commercial breaks. We hope you've enjoyed it, but it's not over. We have another half hour of brand new information which you did not see on television, which we have for you now. But before we get to that, I just want to ask Taryn if we have any questions to wrap up the
A
hour.
lot of people want to know if you have more details about why bodily harm was no longer on the table. They're having a tough time wrapping their mind
interesting.
around that.
That's interesting. Well, with this new judge, obviously felt that the cuts and bruises and bloody noses that the kids suffered did not fall under that. I believe also the judge felt that the kids had received some of these injuries while they were trying to escape. So it's not like they were doing it to them directly, if that makes any sense.
And what's interesting regarding bodily harm is they were convicted, and the allegation of bodily harm was substantiated, but they appealed.
Mm-hmm.
And on appeal, this is fascinating. You ready for this? On appeal, one of the judges, whose last name is Newsom, one of the judges said, I don't think that it actually is bodily harm as the statute says. Mm-hmm. And so that was, what's the right word? It wasn't, that conviction was overturned, correct?
Yes,
The bodily,
yes,
right.
Yes.
So then it was a game changer where they sent them back, as you saw in the hour, and they said, okay, now you're sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. That Judge Newsom, by the way, he retired and became an outspoken advocate for particularly this case, right?
Yes.
And he thought that these individuals, what's the right way to describe it?
They deserved another chance.
A lesser penalty,
Yes.
right? He thought that maybe the punishment was a little too harsh. And anyway, the point is, guess who his son is? The governor of California now, Gavin Newsom. And so I just found that interesting when I was reading our colleague's report in California. It was like, oh wow, that judge's son is now the governor. Does the governor of California have anything to do with the paroles?
Yes, eventually. Yes, I believe.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm not an expert on this though, so I'm
Me
not a lawyer.
Me neither.
Just a journalist. Yes.
Donna Stark wants to know about any retribution. Did they get anything from the kidnappers? Apologies, monetary, anything like that?
That's a very good question. So there was a civil suit. Some of the survivors filed a civil suit against the kidnappers, and they did win settlement. But it was a sealed situation, so we do not know the details. But we've been told that it was not enough to buy a house, but enough for home renovations, if that makes any sense.
All right.
That's what some of the survivors told me.
So let's get to the brand new information that we have. Again, from our colleague George Osterkamp, who was in the parole hearing, has spent a lot of time over the last many months working on this hearing. First of all, Fred Woods, who is the only guy who's still in prison, is a CEO from his cell block. Okay, this is fascinating. Get this. He has been running a Christmas tree farm, a car dealership, and
A gold. We have the report right here, so we're gonna look at it just to make sure we're absolutely correct here.
Christmas tree farm.
Sorry.
Car dealership.
Here we go.
And
Sorry, and a gold mine.
a gold mine. A gold mine, right? He's running this from prison. Now, you remember, you heard Prosecutor Jill Klinge in the hour talk about the fact that the guy can't follow the rules in prison, right? He was caught with pornography. He was caught with cell phones, neither of which you're allowed to have. But did you know that it is legal in the state of California to run these 3 businesses? However, you have to have the permission from the warden, and he does not have that permission. So the reason he keeps getting denied bail is because he can't follow the rules in prison. Now, most recently, he went before the board, and his attorney, we're not going to read all of it, but his attorney basically sent us a letter saying, hey, listen. An email, right? Saying, and we'll read, these are the first words of the email. You ready? It is unconscionable that Mr. Woods remains incarcerated some 43 years after his offense, period. That's a quote. And then he goes on to say, apart from the commitment offense, he has no history of violence, whether before prison or in prison. The bottom line, the prosecutor has said, he's not following the rules in prison. And so if he can't follow the rules in prison, is he going to follow the rules when he gets out? Here's what else is interesting. Tell everybody about the trust fund and how we know about the trust fund.
Well, once again, this is reporting done by a colleague of ours, George Osterkamp. He believes in his research in a court filing that basically Fred Woods has inherited a trust over $100 million. He got this trust from his parents who were deceased.
And he shares it, by the way, with a sibling who is mentally challenged and is institutionalized in the state of California. But Fred Woods has access to all this information. So as a CEO in prison, he's got employees outside of prison. One of those employees has sued him, and as a matter of that lawsuit, we've gotten some of the information that we're sharing with you now. What do we have highlighted here?
Should we talk a little bit about the lawsuit?
Oh wait, can we talk about this for a minute?
Yes, yes.
Get this. Like this was
You
shocking.
can't even script this one.
You can't make this up. Fred Woods.
And tell the source.
Okay.
You know, yes.
Okay. So the source is the lawsuit, right?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So the source. Remember, I told you one of his employees outside of prison sued him. Okay. From the lawsuit, get this. Woods has kept the old vans. Those 2 vans they used to kidnap the kids. Fred Woods has those vans, and this is crazy. He's kept them with the expectation that the notoriety of Chowchilla will make the vehicles worth a lot of money. And on top of that, tell everybody what he said about wanting to do a movie.
So there was a letter as part of the evidence that was confiscated that he sent a letter to a friend of his before his arrest saying, hey, this may make a great screenplay, this may make a great movie, which is crazy that he was thinking about that even before he was arrested.
Well, and it also goes to the point...
His mindset.
And the remorse part, like the guy's looking to benefit. First of all, he's sitting in prison benefiting from his businesses, but he's looking to benefit from the crime that he was convicted of committing, right? So it's shocking.
One thing that I found interesting, and we did mention it in the show, but I think a lot of people are continuously asked why. You know, why would these guys do this? Why would these wealthy young men, when they came from wealth, commit this act? And we learned in what James Schoenfeld's parole hearing, he actually, I'm just going to read the quote again, and we have actually a longer quote here. He basically told the parole board that we needed multiple victims to get multiple millions, and we picked children because children are precious. The state would be willing to pay ransom for them, and they don't fight back. They're vulnerable, and they will mind. Which...
I mean, this was about as premeditated as any crime gets. Thank God these kids survived. That's why we use the word survivors to describe them. They prefer to be called survivors rather than victims. But you also have to think about, Chowchilla at that time of the year was blazing saddles hot.
It was like 102 degrees.
And on top of that, Think about those vans that the kids were in.
gosh.
No windows, and there they are in the back. The van is turning left and right. You're rocking like this. The kids don't know where they're going, right? They don't, like, one of the sound bites in the show was like, we didn't know if we were going into a canyon or something. Like, where are we going?
Yeah, Jennifer didn't even know if they were still in California.
California, that's what she said,
12
yeah.
hours in a van when it's so hot. They have no bathroom facilities, no water. I mean, I think I hope that the show is able to really get across just how brutal this was. One thing I learned that I want to share from talking to the survivors is for a lot of them, that 12-hour car ride in the van was one of the most traumatic parts because they had no idea where they were going. And when the kidnappers opened up the doors and pulled one out, each one out, they thought that they were being shot.
Did you say 12 hours?
It was 12 hours in the van before they got to Livermore,
Well,
which
I
is
told the story.
insane,
I told the story, and I missed that part.
Yeah.
12 hours.
It was.
Wow.
It was. What happened was like I was explaining
Wow.
before.
Wow.
They were driving. They wanted to wait until it was very dark.
So clearly they didn't make a straight trip.
They
were kinda,
did not
yeah,
make
okay,
a straight trip,
right.
exactly, and that was torture for these children
Wow.
who really had never been in darkness like that before.
I think about Mike Marshall, where he was the second to last one to get out, and he talks about telling that young girl who he didn't want to
Monica,
leave
yeah.
behind, literally taking her hands off of him and kind of pushing her away, not knowing what was going to happen to her.
I mean, I can't imagine.
It
I know.
makes the
I
hair
know.
on my arm stand up.
I know,
Do people
I
have
know.
questions?
Yeah, people are asking what happened to the bus driver.
That is a great
yeah.
question, and Ed Ray died. He passed away. He was 91 years old. He passed away in 2012, and he was at a nursing home in Chowchilla. It was very emotional. I know a lot of the survivors did go to the funeral, and they all really cared for this man. They developed a bond, and hopefully that also came across from watching the show. A lot of the survivors are on a Facebook chat, and they stick together, and they're kind of they are their own family out of this. When you live through something like this, it only kind of bonds you together.
We've thanked our team for being a part of it. We also want to thank the survivors for
Oh my
talking to
gosh,
us.
yeah.
And Jennifer, one of the survivors you heard from, her brother, who was also kidnapped with her, passed away and died about,
5 years.
5 years after they were kidnapped. He died in a tragic accident that happened on a farm, not a family farm, but a friend's
local farm, yeah.
And what did she tell you? We were kidnapped. We
She
survived
said,
the kidnapping.
Yeah, and for Jennifer, this was some of the stuff we couldn't get into the show, unfortunately. But for her, it was hard enough that they survived this awful kidnapping, and then to have the person that she was closest to, who kind of was by her side, suddenly being taken from her, that just made everything even worse. And it was, to this day, for both her and her mom Joan, it's just so tragic.
How many of the 26 survivors are still alive?
I believe they all are, except for
And what was
for Jeff.
What was his name? Jeff?
Mhm.
Jeff. Any other questions?
Yeah, some people are asking, they were in the bus for 12 hours, and
Yes.
then they were put in,
And the ground,
into
the
the
tomb.
ground. And was there any food and water?
So there was food and water in the actual underground tomb, if you want to call it. Yes. So the survivors, it is believed that the survivors, their intention was not to kill these children, because they were going to get the ransom and then tell everyone where they were. So that's why they left them food and water. They didn't intend to necessarily kill them. And they obviously never had a chance, as we reported, to call in the ransom because the phone lines were jammed. I don't think that would happen today,
And
but
so they took a nap.
yes,
They
that's
took a
one of
nap.
our favorite parts.
And by
of
the
show.
time they woke up, the kids had come out.
Come out.
And there's that incredible story of them coming out of the hole, and the workers at the rock quarry being like, where did y'all come from, right?
Another thing that hopefully came across is that they really feared okay, what happens if we get to the top? Are they going to be there? Are they going to shoot us when we put our head out?
Right.
And they all decided we're going to take the risk. Mike Marshall, being the brave person that he is, put his head out first and walked out and pulled everyone up. But they still were so scared. Maybe they're in the trees. Maybe so they had the post-traumatic stress that these kids probably faced. I can't even imagine.
So
you know?
I'm seeing on Instagram, someone asked, when they found the kids, where did they take them? I got to tell you, for me, that was a little bit of a you got to be kidding me moment, because they took them to the county correctional center.
The Santa Rita. Yes.
Right, and I thought, you can't take the kids anywhere better than the jail?
I don't really get that either, and that was what we were told was the closest place. Remember, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're in a rock quarry like Livermore, and that was the closest place that can accommodate all these children.
Yeah.
And that's where they took them. And as Jennifer in the hour commented, they're taking us to jail. You know, the big question.
So many people have asked about therapy.
Yes.
And there was that moment in the show where we told you that they took the kids to Disneyland because the thought was, if you go see Mickey Mouse and you have a great day at Disneyland, you'll just be able to forget about what just happened. Which in today's world we would think, okay, that's crazy. You need to get them to a therapist. And I don't know what people thought back then. It seems like they didn't think that they should have gone to therapy. But did you get a sense in talking to Mike and Larry and Jennifer's mom, how some did get therapy? How much did they get or want to get?
So Joan and Jennifer, Joan was very much about, let's talk about it. She encouraged her children to talk about it. So I think Jennifer and Jeff, they did talk. They did get therapy. A lot of the other families didn't know what to do. How do you handle this? What do you do when your kid is kidnapped and buried alive? I mean, for all those hours. There wasn't a playbook on what to do. And a lot of them were told, let's just not talk about this. Let's put this in the past. And unfortunately, that caught up with them, as we learned in the show.
Karen?
Yeah, some people are asking if they know you didn't speak to all of the survivors, but do you know in general how the rest of them are doing? They're concerned about the rest of them. Yeah,
I'm concerned too. I didn't talk to all of them. I wish I did, but I'm sure, hopefully some of them have been watching. But I think that they do talk to each other. They are bonded. I think some are doing better than others.
And people are also asking, now that time has passed, is there anything that the survivors can do since this man's making so much money evidently from jail? Can they do anything to sue now, or is there anything
that is a good
they
question, and I don't know that answer, unfortunately.
But we do know there was a suit that was settled.
That is correct. There
For
was a suit.
all of them?
No, not all of them were in that.
Oh, okay.
And only, I think a lot of them were, but a lot of them were not.
So we also should tell you, which we weren't able to get in the hour, is that every time there's a parole hearing, and remember, Fred Woods alone has had 17 parole hearings. Every time there's a parole hearing, usually one or more of the survivors goes to the parole hearing. So you there have that moment where they're having to relive, right? Like to talk about again the tragedy that they went through more than 40 years ago. For this most recent parole hearing, did any of them go?
There was one survivor.
Okay.
But Jill Klinge read, I believe 4 of them, 3 of them wrote letters that she read, and one of the survivors' son wrote a letter kind of explaining how it's affected his life and how his mom and just how negatively it affected his mom and how he's dealing with it and how hard it's trickled down, it's now.
I want to know about the Schoenfeld brothers. So they've been out,
they're quiet, we believe they live in and around San Francisco area, and they've not gotten in any trouble.
You reached out to them.
George did.
George,
our another producer.
Did
yes.
we hear back?
No. They did not want to comment. And really they haven't commented publicly at all. I know a couple other broadcasts have tried to do the story, have done the story, and they have not been, they've not talked. I believe they talked once, way back, when they were actually still in prison. I think they did an interview with Maury Povich or something, and they actually did it from prison. I'm not sure how that happened, but they did voice some remorse in that interview.
Give everybody the behind the scenes on what happened when the suspects initially took off, right?
Yeah.
So the kids are found, they think our cover's blown.
Right,
what
right.
did they do?
Another interesting thing we couldn't put in the show was the actual investigation, how they actually got Fred Woods and how they actually got James Schoenfeld. Richard Schoenfeld actually gave himself up as soon as he realized there was an arrest warrant out for him. Fred and Richard literally fled. They went to Spokane, Washington, where they had rented a trailer. Fred Woods flew to Vancouver and with a fake passport, and Richard Schoenfeld got in a car and tried to cross the Canadian border. He was denied because he had too many guns, and so they sent him away. They said no, and then he tried to go in a different way, a different part into Canada, and he was denied yet again for having too many guns. And so he realized that he was not going to get into Canada. He then eventually went to Idaho. From Idaho, he ended up going back to California, where he was finally arrested. And it's interesting enough, he was arrested first, and that same day they went and they were able to arrest Fred Woods. And they were able to arrest Fred is because they intercepted his girlfriend at the time. He had been writing letters to his girlfriend, and the girlfriend told the investigators that he was expecting a package from a mailroom, post office, in Vancouver, and so investigators, FBI, dressed up like postal workers, and they got him. And that's how it worked.
Let's see the George's note. Do we have more on there?
Do you want any of this?
The reporting from George?
So that's from inside.
Let's see. Jill Klingy was great.
Jill Klingy's she's wonderful. She works really hard.
And
this is only one of her many cases.
Right, but she's been doing the parole hearings
since 2007.
Since 2007, yeah.
So
she made the case. This is interesting. She made the case to the court. She said the details show that Woods has been lying repeatedly in prior parole hearings and shows that he is still engaged in, quote, criminal thinking from behind bars.
There's a question here. Does he have kids? Vanessa, I do not believe he has any children. I could be wrong on that, but I do know that he has, hang on, let me look at this. He's had 4 wives, 3 of who he's married in prison.
He married women in prison?
3. Not 1, not 2, but 3.
Oh, wow.
Yes. But I do not believe he has any children.
Look at this. Okay, this is crazy town, y'all. So with his trust fund, this is all while the guy's in prison. With his trust fund, Woods bought an ocean view mansion in Nipomo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, which sits mostly vacant 30 minutes down the road from the prison. It's appraised at $1.5 million. At the beginning of the year, he sold another property his family owned on Martha's Vineyard for $550,000. Wow. So some more notes that I have here from the prosecutor. Let's see. We were talking about the lawsuit. So the prosecutor noted that the $1.5 million lawsuit had the plaintiff's name amended, changing it from Fred Newhall Woods to Fred Woods Trust. The prosecutor said, quote, he's trying to use his trust as a shield for his illegal business activities. Again, all being done in prison. Taryn, you got another question?
Yeah, people are wondering about the parents of the guys who did this. What was their response? And did
That
they
is a
say
good
anything?
question. You know, that is a very, very good question. I believe that the parents supported them, especially during, you know, when they were being prosecuted. But as far as their relationship with the parents and what, I do not know any information on that. I apologize.
People are also asking, you know, that when the kids came out, they went to the police station. Did they get medical attention?
Yes. When the kids were brought to the Santa Rita Rehabilitation Center, they did. Doctors were there. They all got checked. We actually have documents showing the reports, and that's where they got the information with the bodily harm, you know, issues. The doctors were there and you know, provided really good notes on kind of their physical state. A lot of the kids, so I read, you know, kids had fainted. It wasn't just, you know, the mental trauma. Like I said, I believe Jennifer had hit her knee when she was jumping from the bus to the van. She had been bleeding. A lot of kids had nosebleeds. They had fainting spells. So they definitely suffered in there, you know.
What was the biggest surprise for you when you were discovering all of this information? It sounds like there might have been many. So some people are just asking in the process of it, what made you just be very surprised?
I think for me, the vans, like when I saw the pictures and we showed them tonight, and the Alameda County District Attorney's Office shared those, allowed us to share those, to see the conditions that they had to deal with in that van for 12 hours, no light, no air, no food, no water. I have a 6-year-old, and I can't imagine how that was for them. And then being forced into that hole, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine. I think that was the big wow factor. When you see those photos, you hear it, but when you see the photos, it just kind of brings it home.
So just to reiterate this, you know, all of the suspects in this case pleaded guilty, right? They all pleaded guilty. Richard Schoenfeld was said to have expressed remorse, but I want to read this to you because this is going to get you fired up. In a newly discovered letter from 1976, Fred Woods urged a friend to write a script. Here's a quote. He said, "I think it would make a damn good movie of the week, if not a feature." He went on to write, "It's big, real big, and a hot item everybody wants to know about. If you do make it into a film, all I want is a percent of it." That's from the man who did it, who's trying to profit off of it from behind bars.
Actually, I'm sorry, that was sent before he was arrested.
Yeah. No, that's from 1976.
Yes, 1976?
Yeah.
So he was thinking like that from the beginning.
People are asking about the lawyers. Did you get a chance to talk to any of the lawyers?
To the kidnappers' lawyers?
Yeah.
Yes, George definitely reached out. And we did get this one comment from Fred Woods' lawyer, and the other lawyers did not want to talk, and they didn't want their clients to talk. So
I'm trying to read some from the attorney's letter. He calls him, Fred Woods, he calls him an elderly inmate, fast approaching 70, and clearly represents no danger to anyone. So he's saying he already paid a steep price for his crime. What was once justice has become injustice. The lawyer writes, "It's long past time to allow Mr. Woods a shot at redemption, and that is so regardless of the continuing pain being suffered by some of the survivors of his crime. He would quell that pain if he could, but all he can do is make amends, which is exactly what he has been doing and will continue to do." That's from the attorney of Fred Woods. Any final questions?
Yeah, after the interviews with each of the survivors,
Yep.
What was their response to the interview? How were they feeling after the interview?
After talking to 48?
So I hope they had a good experience. I think it's very hard for them. I think they trusted us. I hope we did okay. I hope we told their story well. I do think it is for a lot of these survivors. It's helpful.
We actually had someone who checked in and is a therapist and said that it's definitely helpful. If they're willing to do it, it's definitely something that
To talk about it. But we should say, in full disclosure, there are some people in cases like this who do talk, who do regret it after they do it. And, you know, listen, Chris will tell you, we want people to be comfortable, right? This is not about trying to win awards. This is not about trying to convict anyone. This is about trying to tell a story from start to finish in as much time as we have that may remind you of what happened, help you reflect on what happened, and, by the way, if it does anything, if you walk away from this hour thinking therapy is the appropriate way to help trauma, then that's a takeaway. That's a valuable, valid takeaway that makes this hour worth it, right? This was, and I thought it was beautiful when Jennifer said, I want everybody watching to know
I'm doing okay.
that I'm doing okay,
Yeah.
and I've had a great life.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
And Mike Marshall, I'll never forget that quote. I went to bed drunk at 24 and woke up at 48 hungover.
Yeah.
You know,
Poor
I mean,
Michael's
he
been
had
through so much.
decades really down on his luck.
And he's doing really well now. And,
Yeah.
You know.
And I'll be honest, there was a part of me in the beginning where I thought, well, nobody died, nobody was sexually assaulted, nobody was. But that's sort of an ignorant way of looking at it, because trauma is different for everybody. And even though no one died and no one was beaten per se,
But they were children.
they were kids.
They were babies.
And they arguably didn't get the appropriate therapy,
Yep.
and they dealt with it for decades,
their whole
and
life.
still are.
Yeah.
And still are.
And one thing Jill Clingy said in your interview, I always thought, I wonder what they would have been like if they had not experienced this.
Yeah. Well, listen, we thank you. We thank you for engaging with us. We hope that it was worth your time. So many of you have stayed with us for so long, and we really...
I'm still reading your comments here.
Yes, we are reading and scrolling. Taryn, thank you. Chris, thank you. And to our incredible team at 48, thank you for helping us put together a really compelling hour, and we thank all of you for watching. We'll do it again. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.